Joining us now is football's first super agent, Jon Smith. Good morning to you. I mean, I just find it fascinating that footballers are worth this amount of money. I mean, we've had so many people getting in touch today. Pat, via emails, got in touch to say, how can nearly £400 million be spent on 2 footballers? And then makes the point, you know, there are so many people out there who are sort of desperately suffering, you know, don't have enough money. They find it crazy that there are people who can earn that much money. But it is the biggest entertainment on the planet. And you've got to get this in perspective. Probably the biggest export, emotional export, Britain's had since the Beatles. We touch over 2 billion people every weekend. And there's £8 billion worth of income coming into this game just in the UK. So it's only commensurate to the money that is around. And still, we're a small industry by comparison to the oil or the gas.
Yeah. I mean, Keith says football's become a business, it's not a sport anymore. And when you look at this vast sums of money that are involved in this, Jon, and you've been at the heart of some big deals over the years as an agent yourself, it is hard to see, hard to argue with what Keith's saying, that at the heart of this there is a sport. But actually now, for PSG, for Paris Saint-Germain, they are spending that much money, what is it, 362 million on 2 players.
That's what happens when a country owns a football club. And there's 2 of those. Man City's owned by United Arab Emirates.
Yeah, and Qatar and Paris Saint-Germain.
Exactly.
The question that people often have is, how can it possibly be worth it? How can it be worth it for the clubs to pay that sort of money to a player? How can they possibly expect to get that money back?
That's a very good question. It's an emotional business. The billions that circulate in the game are generated by the supporters, by the broadcasters. Very often, people like Roman Abramovich don't use it as a business, they use it as a flagship. And so it's become a trading entity. Most of the Premier League clubs, actually, if you look at them now, are in profit. They actually make £100, £200 million profit in some cases. How you take that and translate that into an industry when it's only really the top few that make it is very difficult. That's the challenge for the game. But it's the real world that we live in, don't forget. Because if you go to the high street, the Tesco's and the Waitresses and whatever else is out there affect the little guy in the village general store. So it's just the world that we live in, and football's just joined the real world.
Yes. And
his father got £64 million out of that transaction.
So that's the deal. So the transfer fee, which was about 200 million euros, something like that, 198 million pounds or whatever it was. Yeah. Neymar doesn't necessarily get that. He gets £500,000.
No, the money, the transfer fee gets moved between the 2 clubs.
That goes to Barcelona.
Essentially, the agent should get 5% of what the player is earning. Slightly convoluted in the Neymar family's existence because of various convolutions, shall I say, in that contract, because it was quite a complex contract. In fact, there was a loyalty clause. I started loyalty clauses to help get people paid if they didn't ask for transfer. There was a loyalty clause in his contract that said if his father procreated the extension of his contract beyond July the 28th...
This is at Barcelona?
At Barcelona. He would then get paid a loyalty fee of 23.2 million. He left on August the 3rd, and his father, having pocketed 64 million, then asked for the 23 million loyalty clause for 5 days. Which they're not going to pay. No, it's just, it's huge money. You have to get it into perspective. And I understand the supporters there who get charged £10 for a hot dog don't understand it. And I get that. And we need, as an industry, we need to look after the supporters.
It's fascinating how it's moved on in just a few decades, isn't it?
It has come such a long way, because you managed one of my West Ham heroes, Tony Cottee, of course, and you organised his deal from...
West Ham to Everton.
West Ham to Everton, which was the first £2 million deal, done in a very different circumstance. Just tell us what it was like that then. That was the sort of the mid-80s, late 80s.
We all used to meet for some bizarre reason, and there was no private jets at the time. Well, there were, but we didn't use them. There was no private suites in hotels. We used to meet in motorway service stations, and Tony Cottee's deal was done at the South Mims service station on the M25. It was £2 million. It was a big story at the time.
Yeah.
No big national news going on. We were the story for 3 or 4 days. Was he going to go to Arsenal or Everton? We end up the M25 service station with people walking out around us as we sat in the cafe going, oh, is that what you're going to get, Tony? Oh, good on you, mate. Well done.
Didn't you get a phone call from one of the newspapers before you'd even done the deal saying, we hear Tony's moving for £2 million because someone had seen it over on the napkin?
That's right, yeah. Some of the people were phoning. There wasn't Twitter in those days or things like that, but people were still phoning in.
Actually used mobile phones.
How things have changed. So it's really interesting, isn't it? Thanks so much for coming in to talk to us this morning.
And you've written this book, which is about, I mean, you were probably the world's first super agent. You've written this book, and there are some fascinating stories similar to that Tony story.
I've tried to be honest and tell it how it is, and from the beginning, we were there at the beginning of the Premier League.
Yeah.
But by the way, I'm very proud of it. Not just the book, I'm very proud of the book as well, but I'm very proud of the fact that we created probably outside of sex, the biggest entertainment industry in the world.
Well, I think we should probably leave it there.
Can I say that? Can I say that this time of the morning? Is it all right?
On that bombshell.